Welcome to That's Good Sports. I'm Brandon. The Denver Broncos are expected to fire new head coach Vic Fangio in 2 years. Perna. The Denver Broncos have hired their next head coach, and it is Bears defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. Despite Mike Munchak's refusal to leave town and Joe Ellis's refusal to interview Fangio, he landed the job. He's 60 years old, and this is his first head coaching job in the NFL. My dad is 62, and like Fangio, spent 40 years in the same profession, but unlike Fangio, had the foresight to be working towards retirement, which he did a year and a half ago. How am I supposed to trust a guy who at age 60 wants the hardest job of his life? How am I supposed to trust Fangio or Munchak if the only other team that wanted to interview them was the Dolphins? I will tell you how. Blind freaking faith. Yeah. So let's take a look at this very important move for the Broncos. That's Good Sports. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, especially if you're a freaking Broncos fan. Also, have you ever seen one of these? Thought that would have been smoother. Yes, it's my new sponsor, Vincero watches. And it does a great job drawing attention away from my hairy arms. You don't want to be a sucker looking at your phone for the time. Instead, get yourself a timepiece from Vincero. Vincero watches are handcrafted behind a company whose mission is to help you elevate your game. Probably why LeBron James plays with 2 Vincero watches on each of his wrists. LeBron James, not an official sponsor of Vincero watches. I partnered with Vincero because I like nice watches at a fair price. And you can tell when a company cares about its product by its packaging. And this arrived in slick packaging. And Vincero, in Italian of course, means I will win. So basically the only time of day I win is when I put on my Vincero watch. If you need a watch, or even if you want to get a gift for your lady friend, check out their website with my link in the description. I got the Chrono S Matte Black watch, and if you use my promo code GOODSPORTS, you will save 15% off your order. Again, the link in the description to Vincero. Use my promo code GOODSPORTS to save yourself some money. The $1 million question, was Vic Fangio the correct hire for the Broncos? To answer that, we need to look to the past and see what I said about Vance Joseph and Gary Kubiak right after they were hired. I also wanted the Broncos to hire Vance Joseph 2 years ago for the defensive coordinator position, but they landed Wade Phillips instead. And now, I don't want Wade Phillips to leave. I trust this hire of Vance Joseph for one very important reason. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about when evaluating head coaching hires. Just look at what I said after Gary Kubiak was hired. It would be like if Manning drove a Mercedes his whole life and Kubiak drove a BMW his whole life, and they attempted to go on a road trip together but couldn't figure out how to start the car because it was a Tesla. If Manning comes back, I'm gonna guess that the offense may actually improve. I looked stunning, but was dead wrong. Manning and Kubiak ditched their luxury cars and did in fact drive a Geo Metro convertible through the NFL season. Basically, I stick with my past conclusions about head coaches. I don't know shit about evaluating head coaches or coordinators in the NFL. And because of that, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, Vic Fangio is the right guy for the job. The ultimate hire to end all Elway hires. And that will be true no matter what happens on the field. Here's the real dilly deal, as the millennials say. John Elway is a human person. Vic Fangio is a human person being hired for a very high-profile job after 40 years of working for this opportunity. And like with any high-level job, there is great risk with every hire. Now, it might be the perfect combination of Fangio, Kubiak, and Elway working together in harmony to make the Broncos a competitive team again. And it might fail miserably. And most likely, it will be somewhere in between. As a guy who is usually passed over for the high-profile jobs, let me say this to the men who did not get hired. Chuck Pagano, Zach Taylor, Brian Flores, and Mike Munchak. Welcome to the Losers Club. Water's warm with bromine and mediocrity in here. And if you drink for too long in the hot tub, you'll go fucking insane. I was a finalist to be a producer-writer for Katie Nolan's ESPN show this last summer, and I was not selected. So I say that with the utmost respect to the loser coaches. Now, even though we know it's Fangio's job, I still wanted to do a quick pros and cons list for the two leading candidates, Mike Munchak and Vic Fangio, just so you understand what Elway was considering while making this selection, and because that ended up working out just fine for Ross and Rachel on Friends. And unlike that coward Ross, I will bring this list directly to Munchak or Fangio and read it to their faces. Let's start with Munchak. Pro. He's from Scranton, PA, the fake hometown setting of the greatest sitcom in TV history, The Office. What's The Office known for? Great leadership and management. As long as you're referencing Idris Elba's character Charles Minor in season 5. Con. He's an offensive line coach. Just think about the phrase, head coach Garrett Bowles. Pro. He's literally a pro in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Con. He's already in the Hall of Fame. What on earth would his motivation be? Con. Joe Ellis showed up to his interview. And Joe Ellis is on Broncos Country's shit list. Not because he's holding the ownership situation hostage via the trust he controls, but because he refuses to give the stadium naming rights to a weed company. What a fucking square, man. That's right, just like Marcus Peters says.
Yeah, square ass nigga, talk that shit now, nigga.
He's a square. Another con. He has never been described as a mob boss like Fangio. Con was the head coach of the Tennessee Titans and never felt the urge to grow a mustache. Con. Too many pictures of him smiling on the internet. So, more cons than pros for Munchak. Now for Fangio's pros and cons list. Con. He looks like a con. Pro. Joe Ellis didn't take the time to show up to his interview. Con. Sounds like he's a shock jock for a shitty morning drive radio show. Pro. He also sounds like he owns a nice little Italian restaurant with those red and white checkered tablecloths, and possibly runs some sort of illicit activity out of the back room. Except I wouldn't really say that because it's anti-Italian American. Except I am one, so maybe it's okay. Con. He's only almost from Scranton, PA. He was born in Dunmore, PA, which is literally right next to Scranton. Guess his parents should have done more to live in Scranton. Pro. He also looks like John Taffer from Bar Rescue. Vic Fangio's Broncos Rescue. Pro. Khalil Mack called him an evil genius. Pro. Who else is an evil genius? This asshole. And maybe now the Broncos will finally have their very own asshole the rest of the football world hates because he kicks the shit out of them every week. Pro. There are 0 pictures of him smiling on the internet. Pro. Bears fans did not want him to leave. Boom. There you have it. He wins the pros and cons list. He's the best coach ever. Here's the weird thing about the Fangio hire, from my perspective. And this has been discussed all week by the local media, but Adam Schefter tweeted, Vic Fangio now gets to run the Broncos team and defense. Gary Kubiak gets to run the offense. Fangio and Kubiak now lead the way. So Vic Fangio finally becomes a head coach in the NFL, but then is sort of publicly neutered of power by insinuating Kubiak will have more say than a normal offensive coordinator or whatever his role ends up being. Which does go back to what I said in my last coaching video. Fangio seems like the only head coaching candidate to not really give 2 shits about what the offense does every week. Vic Fangio has been hired by the Broncos on a 4-year deal with a team option for a 5th year. And boy, do I hope he makes it to that 5th year, because the last Broncos coach to make it that far was Mike Shanahan. The Broncos are one of the best teams in the NFL at firing head coaches after 2 seasons, and then continuing to pay them when they are no longer on the team. Let's hope that changes. And here's a little info about Vic Fangio. He's 60 years old, 2 years away from collecting Social Security. His first coaching job was in 1979 as a defensive coordinator for Dunmore High School. His first stop in the NFL was a linebackers coach for 8 years with the Saints, back when they had Ricky Jackson, Vaughn Johnson, Sam Mills, and Pat Swilling, who combined for 15 Pro Bowls under Fangio. His first job as a defensive coordinator was in Carolina, expansion team, where they made it to the NFC Championship game in their 2nd year on the strength of their defense. And his most recent stops have been San Francisco for 4 years under Jim Harbaugh, and most recently, of course, Chicago. When you consider that he's worked with those 4 Saints linebackers, that I mentioned, plus Kevin Green, Ray Lewis, Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, Khalil Mack, and Roquan Smith, I trust him with Von Miller and Bradley Chubb and Todd Davis. In fact, I don't know if I trust anyone more, except for maybe Von Miller's mom. But here's what I like most about the Vic Fangio hire. The whole league is going in one direction. The Cardinals with Cliff Kingsbury, the Packers with Matt LaFleur, the Browns with Freddie Kitchens, basically all young offensive guys. And the Broncos are doubling down on defense. And that's smart, because why would you want to have the best Christmas lights on the block when you could just hire Russell Crowe from LA Confidential to tear them all down? Elway knows the Broncos' identity is on defense right now, and the best players on the team are still on that side of the ball in Miller, Chubb, Wolf, Simmons, Gotsis, Harris, and maybe the other Harris if they keep him. I respect the fact that they're not out there trying to grab the Kmart version of Sean McVay when they can have an authentic defensive guy in Vic Fangio. In a division with Pat Mahomes and Phillip Rivers, it's smarter to build another great defense than to try and match them on offense, which, as we all know, hasn't been an easy thing to do for the Broncos. That defense-first philosophy can change when Denver finds their quarterback. Until then, I like the idea of beating opposing AFC West teams into submission with the relentless defensive attack, a Fangio specialty. I'm also okay with Kubiak taking back control of the offense. Sure, he did less with an injured Peyton Manning than any coach in NFL history, but he did more with Brock Osweiler and Trevor Siemian than anyone else as well. Kubiak's offense isn't as dated as you might think. Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan are running that offense with just a few tweaks and some pre-snap window dressing to find the right matchups. The interesting thing will be to see who Fangio brings in as his de facto defensive coordinator, and if Kubiak will actually be the offensive coordinator or just some weird job that they make for him. Early name for defensive coordinator is Ed Donatel, per Ben Albright on Twitter. Now, coming from Chicago in the NFL's best defense in 2018 until he got Big Dick nicked in the wildcard round, which would have never happened if Big Dick Vic was the head coach of the Bears, you have to look at which defensive Bears players will be free agents and could come to Denver this offseason. We know the players in Chicago loved playing for Fangio, as is evidenced by this Prince Amukamara tweet, who tweeted #swear words when he learned Fangio would be leaving. Prince Amukamara is the Bears' corner, not the African prince emailing you for a financial opportunity. Right off the bat, you have safety Adrian Amos, who will be an unrestricted free agent. He's 26 and coming off back-to-back great seasons and had a top 10 coverage grade for his safety on Pro Football Focus. You also have nickel corner Bryce Callahan, who will be an unrestricted free agent as well. Callahan is 27, broke his ankle in December, but was ranked as a top 10 corner before the injury. Elway may have lost some of his juice in terms of recruiting free agents after Peyton Manning left. Hell, he may have lost all of his juice when Vance Joseph left. But the NFL is all about relationships, and if Fangio can recruit a safety and corner to the Broncos defense, suddenly the secondary becomes respectable again. We will get to that more though once free agency shapes up in March, but coaches usually bring a guy or two with them. Maybe it's a well-known player, like I mentioned, or it's a Brandon Marshall and a Terrence Knighton, like Del Rio brought over from Jacksonville. So again, in conclusion, this is the smartest hire by John Elway ever. And Fangio will solve every problem the Broncos have had since winning Super Bowl 50. Guarantee that shit. Thanks for watching another episode of That's Good Sports. Please subscribe here on YouTube. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, @BrandonPerna if you want to follow me there. Will Keys and I will break down this hire even more on our podcast, That's Good Sports Podcast, available iTunes, Podbean, second YouTube channel, That's Good Podcasts.